Most of my time is just to get up in the morning. Andy Warhol spent his final months creating art nobody talks about. He made paintings with his own urine. He drew explicit images of body parts. He documented every conversation, every scandal, every secret. But his last sketchbook contained something different. One page was so shocking that when his assistants found it, they covered it in black ink. The page wasn't about celebrities or soup cans. It was about the real reason he was terrified of hospitals. What he drew explains why a simple surgery killed him. The truth was hidden for decades. Andy Warhol was born on August 6, 1928, in a poor little apartment in Pittsburgh. His full name back then was Andrew Warhol. His parents had come to America from Slovakia, trying to escape hunger and hard times. But life in Pittsburgh wasn't much easier. They lived in a small apartment with barely enough space for their family. His father, Andre, worked in dangerous jobs like mining and construction. He came home every night, covered in dirt, worn out, but still trying to smile for his children. They moved around a lot because they couldn't afford to stay in one place too long. One of their homes was on Bean Street, another on Dawson Street. It was a tough neighborhood filled with other poor immigrant families who were also just trying to survive. Andy grew up wearing old clothes passed down from his brothers Paul and John. There were times when they didn't even have enough money for food. His mother Julia did everything she could to keep the family going, often sewing, cleaning, and praying. In 1936, when Andy was just 8 years old, something terrible happened. He got very sick with a condition called Sydenham's chorea. His body started shaking and he couldn't control it. He had to stay in bed for weeks. Sometimes he would lie there completely still, staring at the ceiling, afraid he might never be normal again. His skin turned pale, his hair thinned. He missed so much school because of it. And when he did go, the other kids made fun of him. They called him names and pushed him around for looking different. But during all those quiet hours at home, his mother brought him magazines filled with pictures of movie stars. Greta Garbo, Shirley Temple. Andy would stare at them and start to draw. He'd cut out their faces and make collages. He was trapped in his body, but in his mind, he was free. That small kitchen table where he lay became his first studio. He later said that being sick like that actually helped him become who he was. Around that same time, his parents gave him a little brownie camera. He built a tiny dark room in their basement and started taking pictures. That camera became one of the most important tools in his life. Even though he would grow up to be known for wild parties and strange friends, Andy always kept something deeply private about himself. His mother Julia was extremely religious. She prayed every single day and took Andy with her to the Byzantine Catholic Church. The church was filled with golden icons and images of saints. Andy would just sit and stare at them for hours. They gave him comfort. They gave him inspiration. And even after he became famous, even after all the flashy nights in New York, he still secretly went to church many times a week. He even helped pay for his nephew to become a priest and used to quietly serve food at homeless shelters. When he died in 1987, over 2,000 people came to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York to remember him. And one art historian shocked everyone by saying Andy had helped convert someone to faith before he passed. But the moment that changed everything came in May 1942. Andy was just 13 years old when his father died. Andre had been working in West Virginia, and he drank some contaminated water on the job. Because he had already been sick from a surgery years earlier, his body couldn't fight off the infection. He died from tuberculosis, peritonitis. When they brought his body home, they laid it in their tiny living room for 3 full days, just like their religious tradition said they should. Andy was so scared he ran and hid. He couldn't even look at his father's face. After that, life got even harder. Andy and his brother Paul started going door to door, selling fruits and vegetables. Andy would also sketch people on the street for a few cents. The family didn't have money for real art lessons, so Andy ordered mail-in courses and practiced at home. School didn't get any easier. Because of his illness, Andy looked different from the other kids. His skin was light. His nose was slightly off-center. His voice was soft. Classmates bullied him constantly. They punched him. They laughed at how he walked and talked. Sometimes he just stayed home and refused to go back. All of this left deep scars. Even when he grew up, he couldn't stop thinking about how he looked. He even had surgery later to fix his nose. But instead of letting the bullying break him, Andy did something else. He turned it into his armor. In the 1960s, he dyed his hair silver. He wore wigs, makeup, and scarves. He became someone no one could ignore. The kid they used to beat up became the man who made being different into a kind of power. In high school, Andy didn't just survive. He surprised everyone. At Shenley High School in Pittsburgh, he graduated in 1945 at just 16 years old. Out of 278 students, he ranked 51st. Teachers didn't know what to make of him. While other kids were drawing bowls of fruit, Andy was sketching soup cans and toothpaste tubes. He'd win big art awards, but still be seen as strange. His illness was still affecting him, but all those hours stuck in bed had trained his eyes to see the world differently. He didn't want to paint flowers. He wanted to paint fame. Later that year, In September 1945, Andy got into the Carnegie Institute of Technology. He was one of 60 freshmen in the art program. Because the war had just ended, most of the students were women. Andy struggled in school. His old illness had left his hands shaky, and he couldn't always paint neatly. Some professors wanted to kick him out, but other students, mostly veterans, stood by him. The school focused on commercial design, not fancy fine art. So, Andy found a place there. He worked hard, even drawing covers for the student magazine. He finally graduated in 1949 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. During college summers, he worked in Pittsburgh department stores doing window displays. He learned how to grab people's attention, how to arrange products like they were part of a story. But even then, his art was seen as too feminine. His lines were soft, his colors delicate. Some clients didn't like it, but Andy kept going. The most important influence in his college life was a teacher named Robert Lepper. He taught Andy to look at everyday objects like they were art, soup cans, bottles, simple things. Andy started drawing his family's meals, which later turned into his most famous paintings. Lepper even encouraged Andy to explore his own identity. In 1949, Andy made a shocking self-portrait, standing completely nude, except for a pair of Mary Jane's shoes. In a conservative city like Pittsburgh, that was almost unthinkable. That same year, Andy took the biggest risk of his life. In June 1949, just after graduating, he packed a bag, grabbed $200 his mother had saved, and boarded a train to New York City. He moved into a tiny apartment in a bohemian part of town with a classmate named Philip Pearlstein. Andy also dropped the A from his last name and became simply Andy Warhol. He wanted a fresh start. On his second day in New York, he walked straight into the office of Glamour magazine and introduced himself. That bold move changed everything. They asked him to draw shoes for an ad. He got the job. And just like that, his career had begun. Andy Warhol was just a commercial illustrator when he started painting soup cans in November 1961. He painted 32 canvases, each showing a different flavor of Campbell's soup. By July 9, 1962, his work was being shown in Los Angeles. That moment changed everything. The art world was shocked. Nobody had seen grocery store items in a gallery before. Warhol had traced each soup can from a projector and painted them by hand. Critics weren't sure if it was art or a joke, but Warhol said he ate that soup every day for 20 years. That was his world, and now he was showing it to everyone. That same year, in 1961, Warhol saw Roy Lichtenstein's Mickey Mouse painting at a gallery. It crushed him. He thought Lichtenstein had stolen his ideas about turning commercial images into art. They both were using mass media as inspiration. Lichtenstein used comic book dots, and Warhol used silkscreen prints. The rivalry was quiet but deep. They watched each other's moves and even collected each other's work. Warhol once turned Lichtenstein into a portrait, making his competitor part of his own art. Critics argued for decades about who truly started pop art, but both men were changing how the world looked at advertising and cartoons. Then, in August 1962, something tragic happened. Marilyn Monroe died. Just weeks later, Warhol made a giant artwork using one of her publicity photos from 1953. It was called the Marilyn Diptych. On one side, her face was in bright colors. On the other, it faded into black and white. People were stunned. Some were angry, saying Warhol was using her death to sell art, but others saw it as a tribute. He used the format of religious paintings like altarpieces, turning Monroe into a modern saint. That piece made Warhol famous in a whole new way. The Guardian would later call it one of the most important artworks of modern times. In January 1964, Warhol moved his studio to a new building. Within days, wooden boxes started arriving. He spent weeks turning them into life-sized Brillo soap pad boxes. They looked exactly like what you'd see in a supermarket. He displayed them at the Stable Gallery in April 1964. Critics were furious. Some said it wasn't even art, but Warhol didn't care. He said making Brillo boxes gave him something to do. Each one cost $4,000 to make, but barely sold. That moment made people question everything they thought they knew about sculpture and galleries. That same year, Warhol was invited to create a mural for the New York World's Fair. He chose mugshots of real criminals. Taken from a police booklet from 1962, mural showed faces of 13 wanted men. It went up on April 15, 1964. But within days, officials painted over it in silver. They were scared of the controversy. When the fair opened, all people saw was a big silver wall. Warhol didn't fight back. Instead, he quietly made smaller versions of the paintings and showed them in Paris in 1967. He had once again turned censorship into attention. In 1964, Warhol built something unforgettable. He covered the walls of his studio with silver foil and turned it into a place called the Factory. This wasn't just a workspace. It became a wild place full of artists, drag queens, addicts, and outsiders. Between 1963 and 1968, Warhol made more than 650 experimental films there. He wanted to work like a machine. People came in and out all day and night. He even said in 1963, "I want to be a machine." The Factory was his machine. The factory was his machine.